What is going on, people? It is Steiner here with another episode of Secondhand Talent, this time on location with our guest, Paul Nixon,
Hey, bud.
founder and owner of Round Trip Records
So
here
nice
in
to meet you.
Chicago.
Thank you.
Welcome to Secondhand Talent, Paul.
I love it. Thanks for having me.
I'm really happy that you're here. I'm glad we finally made this happen. I'm glad we're doing it here at Round Trip. I'm glad we have our friends from Luke Chew and from Tenacious Toys, our Lo-Fi and our Danger Dog over here joining us as always. Thanks, Benny. Thanks, Luke. And wow, season five, it's really kind of hard to believe. I've been asking this question a lot, and I'm gonna ask it again. So at this point in time, most people who I ask to be on the show know what secondhand talent is.
Yeah.
So taking away what the show is, the first time you saw me post and it said, "Hey, my podcast is called Secondhand Talent."
Well, I always think secondhand means like used. But to me, used is kind of like still pretty great because I sell used vinyl. Used is a weird word because it doesn't mean like used up or like it just means like not brand new in the
Yeah.
package, maybe.
I
But
like that used doesn't mean used up.
yeah,
That's important.
yeah. And I love that it means what it means too. Like because just because you're seeing somebody on the stage with the spotlight doesn't mean there's not like a whole thing built to support that artist and so many people who you don't always see in the spotlight, really doing masterful work and doing great work to make sure that artists get to the ears that need to hear them or the eyes that need to see them.
Yeah, I've often said that, it takes a village to put on a concert and it takes about the population of Wyoming to put on a festival like Lollapalooza. It's pretty wild how many people it takes in the ecosystem, in the village, how many villagers in the village of live music to make this happen. Also, that folks, do you know how secondhand talent is? This is DIY with the camera. If you hate the angle, leave a comment, but we're dealing with what we're dealing with because we wanted to be at Round Trip. But before, Paul,
Yeah,
little slip there.
that's my name. Don't wear it out.
Don't befall the fall. Yeah. Um, before you started a record shop, and we were round trip started
Yeah.
2019, 2020.
Yeah, we opened into 21, but that was through COVID or whatever. We were online.
Well, I mean, it still takes stages to,
Yeah,
develop the name and
yeah,
branding, and also in order to get an actual physical storefront for something like a record shop, especially, in a competitive marketplace like Chicago. And before we get into, why you decided to open the business, I really want to hear about what got you into vinyl because we met through shout out Heady Wax Fiends,
Heady Wax Fiends.
the best place on the internet. Shout out Chris, shout out Blake. Check out their interviews in season three. Shout out Garrett Melby, who's in the group as well, and his artwork and his interview in season three. It is an incredible place to be, folks. If you love vinyl, check it out. Shout out Heady Wax Fiends. We love you
Yeah, for
guys.
sure. Much love.
So, what was it that, or what was, you know, typically I ask people because, they're working in the live music scene, what was the first, concert you went to that had a real big impact? But for you, I'm more curious, what was the first record that you experienced that not just listened to, the first record that you felt like, oh, this is not just listening to music, this is listening to a record.
I mean, there was a day I slept over at my friend's house and then in high school. And then I wake up Saturday morning and across the street, these guys are just selling records out on their lawn. And they were 25 cents. And for $1, I got Bob Marley and David Bowie and Black Sabbath and Pink Floyd and the Grateful Dead, American Beauty. And I think the first one I played was American Beauty. And it's not totally dissimilar from that classic moment in Freaks and Geeks where she drops the needle and Box of Rain starts, and you're just like, whoa. I had loved music. I was a tape collector. My parents have loads of LPs, so I was like familiar with what they were and all that, and like that they were something good. But the fact
So
that, yeah, just like discovering a new band in that format with those are like the first records I bought with my own money.
So, what was the first connection of familiarity with the medium? If your parents were tape collectors and vinyl lovers, what was the first
Oh, like
like
way back.
yeah, let's go way back. Let's go in the way back machine. What was the first record
I
you heard
think
where you were like, this matters?
think I was like 5 or 6, maybe like kindergarten, and in music class we were like singing along to this song Octopus's Garden. And I went home and I told my mom, and she goes, "Oh, okay, let me find it." And goes into her LPs, pulls out the Beatles, pops on Octopus's Garden. You hear the little pop, a little bit of crackle, and then I'd like to be. And I was like, yeah, that. How did you do that? It seemed like
That's the
magic.
one,
It
man.
seemed like
What? How did you get it on there too?
exactly.
It is kind of like
Yeah.
magic. Like all of it, like you can take vinyl and put it in this machine and you master this music and create this lacquer press and you make this mold and create this piece of vinyl plastic that
Yeah. And to a
and
5-year-old, it looks like you take a black circle and it suddenly plays an amazing song that you love.
one of my absolute favorite things to do when I'm teaching fourth grade is to bring in my small record player and bring in a bunch of 45s and show them how they can hear it without speakers. And
Oh, yeah.
and it blows their mind every time. And I think that's a big part of it. You talk about um having that connection with your mom over Octopus's Garden by pretty sure I've heard of it.
Yeah. They're a
Um
pretty good band.
yeah, they're all right. Um being able to forge that intergenerational connection, is a lot of what secondhand talent is about as well.
Yeah. It was the
Where
Beatles.
but
That was the band.
oh yeah. I was thinking the Eagles for some
I was like,
reason.
Beatles.
Beatles. Yeah, I was thinking the Eagles for some reason. No, but being able to like hear, like I recall, a similar event happening in my house, with the Rolling Stones, where I got really into Start Me Up, and my mom had
Nice.
a copy of Live 1980,
That rules.
and I was like,
So even though I'm from a Beatles house and you're from a Rolling Stones house, I think we still like find a mutual common ground
well, really,
in records and music
I
and
would be remiss not to say, Mom, I come from a Zappa and Grateful Dead
a
house.
Zappa and Grateful Dead
and
house.
and
Dude,
and
you are
dad
lucky.
dad Bee Gees. I know, Bee
Nice.
Gees.
That's cool.
But yeah, listening to my mom's records when I was a kid, we were raised, pretty sheltered, but our parents love music, and even from a young age, I got to go see live music. I got to go see bands like Three Dog Night, Rare Earth, Grand Funk Railroad, Blue Oyster Cult, all these bands that my dad was a fan of, he would take me to go see when they did concerts in the park in the 90s. And it was awesome. But being able to hear a live experience come from a record was something that I had never like
Yeah.
that version of Jumpin' Jack Flash. I'll never forget the first time I heard it. I was just like, it feels like I'm
Yeah.
there.
It's like
What a gas,
3D.
what a gas. Like,
Totally. Yeah. It's a great feeling.
so what was your kind of progression once you realize, hey, I can get 6 records for $1? Like, how
I
did
would
it go
go
on from there?
I wasn't like super into digging yet in high school, but there were opportunities to find used records here and there, thrift stores or like flea markets or things like that. There was like a couple they would have at our school sometimes, and like there would always be records, and I would always kind of like try and find the weird stuff or like rock that I knew, but what was more likely I would find would be like the Pope singing or like which at the time it was like, wow, that's weird. I'm never gonna find that at the real record store or anything. Um, but yeah, so like from there, uh, The next record I bought besides those was at a punk show. Like in northeastern New Jersey, there was not a lot of music to see live, but what was really great was people involved in a DIY kind of scene and friends in bands uh and I went to one of my friends' band's shows at a church, and someone had just set up a table of records, and it was all stuff that I was like had no idea what it was. All this like punk rock. And I was looking through like there is a whole thinking to myself, there's like a whole world or maybe worlds that I need to explore, don't know yet. And I saw one that was by the Descendants, who I had heard of, and it was called I Don't Want to Get Bootlegged. And it was demos from their album Enjoy, and it was put together as it said on the back, for fans by fans. And the 45 didn't have any writing on the sides. I'm like, okay, so vinyl is way bigger than I ever thought. That record ruled, and I try to just roll the dice at subsequent shows. Just like if I saw a band I liked, I'd buy their 45, which back then were like $3 or $5 or something maybe. But yeah, it was like that world that took me into vinyl deeper.
I 45s happen to be my favorite. I love 7-inch and 10-inch records. I don't I don't know why, but that delving beyond genre and into the medium. I mean, it's really exemplified when I look around, this shop. There's the bands that you were talking about earlier. I see, the Kinks, the Grateful Dead, Sid Barrett band, but there's also Radiohead, NoFX, Metallica, uh, Coltrane, Suicidal Tendencies, Joy Division, Kraftwerk. Like it's really about more than just any specific genre of music. It's the medium itself that I feel like is the what really sets it apart. And I feel like that's kind of a no-brainer, but it would be remiss. I would be remiss not to say it is that it is the medium that draws that. Let's call it the Rice Krispies effect. The snap, crackle, pop of
Really,
dropping the needle is
yeah,
like adds a warmth to the sound that otherwise just really isn't there in any other format.
yeah. I think you feel closest to an artist when you hear it on vinyl.
Hmm.
There is
Yeah.
that like history of the times that people have played it before you, if you find a used one or whatever. But every record kind of tells a story of its listens, if you listen with the right kind of ears.
So my favorite, one of my favorite collections of mine is of one of my favorite bands, which is Steely Dan.
Nice.
And one of the things I loved about Steely Dan the most is that they would bring in, A-list musicians into the studio
All
and
ringers.
all
Yeah.
ringers, and oftentimes wouldn't even go with their cut. And like it'd be like you're bringing Keith Richards into the studio and not going with the lick he puts down. Like, okay, but that was what they did. And I feel like the copies that I've been able to acquire, none of them are brand spanking new, and I don't think I want them that way. I don't. We were talking a little bit before we started the interview about how some people are really into the brand new releases and the new drops, and
Yeah.
I feel like my personal hot take is that 180-gram vinyl means nothing. I like just give me a regular record. Um,
Yeah. In a way, it's just extra vinyl. There's probably an upside to it, but I also think,
maybe for mixing bass better at the heavier ends, but besides for that, I mean, it just seems to be almost. And maybe this is, folks, let us know in the comments if this is a controversial opinion, but it
yeah,
seems to
stir the
me
pot.
like 180-gram vinyl is a cash grab in the
Yeah, I
same
think
way that
200 or up only, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
no, just regular, the way it's
Regular,
always been done,
exactly.
the way
Regular
it's
is the
always been
best.
done. I mean, because you can't fake it. Like you were saying, also off camera, we were talking about how, in record production, check out my interview with Maor Applebaum from season 3 to learn a little bit more about mastering. Um, There are so many people involved. Forget the band, just end to end for the production of a single record.
Absolutely.
There are so many people involved, especially if we're talking about a physical record.
Absolutely. Yeah, the my old band recorded with an engineer and I said, "What are the best kinds of records?" And he goes, "The ones that get finished." And that has like lived with me because it there are so many that you'll never hear because they don't get mastered or they don't the lacquer gets cut wrong or the something at the end after you've written all the songs, tracked all the things up, your drummer quits and you can't, you know what I mean? Like
The hardest of hard truths.
uh
Oh my God,
but
yes.
the ones that do are miracles. So like yeah, we have a wide array, but that's why we can have them. They exist.
Yeah. And not only do they exist, they foster community, and this is going to lead into round trip. But we met through the best place on the internet. Shout out
Heady Wax Fiends,
Heady Wax Fiends record group.
the
We
dudes.
abs Heady Wax Fiends record club. We love you guys. Check out Chris and Blake's and Garrett's interview in season 3. If you don't know, find out. It's the best place on the internet, especially if you love vinyl. Chock full of incredible people, pressing incredible music, artists getting involved, folks like
Yeah,
Paul and
great
I
stores.
connecting, just great stores, great ways to support local businesses and record shops, and just an all around great place to be. And what I love the most about it is that they'll press an album by Kitchen Dwellers and then Bela Flex Drive.
Yeah.
And you really get, and then something like Say She.
Yeah, the family tree of jam seems so disparate and wide, and Heady Wax Beans does a great job of like putting it all under the same umbrella and being like, "Hey guys, check it out. We're all friends."
And I think that was exemplified by, at the time of this taping, the most recent. So the Heady Wax Fiends Record Club is actually a record club. You may be able to join. There may be a waiting list. But the record of the month last year was a live recording of a band called the Polyrhythmics. If you don't know them, check them out. They were live at the Get Down in Portland. Blake, the owner and founder of the Get Down, was on the show a few seasons ago, season 3. Um, what a great coming together of a band, a venue, an independent local venue, an independent record club, an independent record producer recording a live show and pressing it for fans.
Yeah, that is pretty astoundingly great.
In what other place does something like that, forget conceptually, actually following through, come together?
Yeah, and it shows like how much talent there is on both sides of the stage and how much passion goes into it and the trust fall of investing all of that time and effort and money and having it be caught by like this community that just like makes it all possible. It's cool.
It really is. And Secondhand Talent is a small business. Round Trip Records is a small business, and it is a great opportunity as well if you love vinyl. Like Paul was saying, there's so much vinyl out there, and actually, I have a small story to share from the group. Uh, my uncle uh, drummed in a few bands, and I made it my mission after joining the group to ultimately complete his discography. And I was missing 145. One 7-inch record. It was a test pressing of their Sub Pop single, Texas Love Goat, and the B-side, which is the theme song to our show, Shoot the Cool. Shout out Lonely Moans. According to Discogs, there are 7 in existence, and a group member hooked me up with
Wow.
one to complete my discography of my uncle, which is,
So
I mean, like, what a kind thing to do. Thank you again, buddy. You know who you are. I appreciate it every day. And what a great thing to be able to show this to my uncle, and he didn't even know it existed.
Yeah,
It's this maroon test press from 1988
that's crazy. Maroon.
and handwritten. Yeah, it's wild, but that family connection to vinyl is, I identify with that as kind of like the beginning, like nexus point of the journey, because that's kind of where I started as well, as family on the
Yeah,
records.
that's the best, man. That is the best.
It it
Vinyl is such a great thing to like pass on and share. Like, and especially when people are looking out and they see something that, if they're holding it and they didn't know that it was your uncle's band, it means so much to you. And for them to share that with you is like, it's a big thing to do. And obviously, it means a lot to the people that you share it with.
and one of the coolest opportunities that I've had in this program is to have artists on. I do have bands on, or band members or solo artists who do all their secondhand talent themselves. And I had a couple of people reach out to me after my buddy Joe Marcinek's interview. Joe, shout out, love you, buddy. And they let me know, hey, we just pre-ordered his record. And I was like, wait a minute, are you telling me I'm responsible for some of my friends' record sales? Like, to me, that's the highest order of compliment that I could get
Yeah.
for this show.
Yeah. It shows that you're like, it's working.
Well, if the person is hearing something from the musician that really connects with them and makes them want to check out the art that they create, I mean, that's really what it's all about. And getting to Round Trip, as soon as I found out that not only did you have a shop, but you're local and a group member, and that's how we met.
Yeah.
That's kind of how the genesis of this began. What what was the inception for the idea to actually have a record shop? It's one thing to be a collector, but we're right now at Round Trip Records, physical location, folks, here in Chicago. And I mean, I gotta ask, what was it that prompted you to move from just a collector and aficionado into making it a business?
It was kind of a long path. Around the turn of the millennium, I worked in a record store that's now defunct over near the Wiener Circle at Clark and Wrightwood. It was called Video Beat, and they specialize in like unofficial, I guess, bootleg VHS, which kind of dates when that was. And the store sort of decided to close when DVDs started to pick up, and the owner didn't really want to switch
That doesn't
format.
date us any less.
So yeah, um, but I was collecting vinyl there, even without a record player. Still at that point, I was like towards the end of my college career, and I bought a turntable and started to buy records. Always loved going into record stores. Like when I was a kid, like if I was good at school or if like, my parents were gonna like reward me with something, it was like go to the CD store or the tape store then too. So I had a good cassette collection as a kid, and my parents had older friends that would give me their tapes too, which turned me on to so many great bands. And that's probably why I'm like a Genesis fan. They were like one of
Speak my
the best,
language a little louder, brother.
the best bands ever. Uh, so then
No one will ever convince me otherwise.
I was working downtown. I had a sort of crummy job sitting at a desk doing data entry, but I was, on the side just downloading zip files of like rare psych LPs that people ripped for their blogs. It was like the media fire mega upload days of
Mhm.
like internet gold, like the golden era of the blog.
Oh yeah.
And so, I would like amass these like playlists and put them on my iPod and be like explore all these bands that no one had shown me or I've never seen in a store or anything like that. Um, then I started in I we got laid off or whatever, so then I decided I was going to intern at record labels. So I went to Thrill Jockey Records and it was great. I learned what, in hindsight, was like all the right things to do what I'm doing now. How to manage like shipping orders, how to properly pack a record, how to manage a warehouse inventory, how to do like social media, things like that. And the same, I also started interning at Numero Group Records too, which was a very interesting place too. They were, excavating record labels in states in the Midwest or West Coast, all over the place, and just trying to find little like clusters of music that needed to be heard, had less than their optimal audience,
Mm.
like music that never really got its fair shot in the beginning, was underappreciated, and they went to great lengths to make sure like the records were like licensed and they were putting out like things that were going to benefit the artist and teach people about this great music. um, so I was in the garage at the old Numero spot over on Marshall Boulevard, and with another intern, we're inventorying their CDs. I know, hold your excitement.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work, and I'm like, on unemployment at the time, so I have to be like looking for work. I mean, not air quotes. I actually did have to be looking for work. So I was like, "Hey, what do you do?" And he said, I work at a record store." And I said, "Oh yeah, which one?" He goes, "Lori's Planet of Sound." I was like, "Oh, cool. Are they hiring?" He's like, "Actually, yeah, I think they are." And I was like, "Oh, is it seriously that easy?" So I walked in. They made me fill out like a quiz, and even though I thought "Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat" was a Kanye West song in the the matching section, because I don't listen to that guy, uh, I still got the job because I could name all four Beatles, and I had a favorite Beach Boy, and I knew where to file Led Zeppelin under L, not Z or whatever. So I ended up working there for years, maybe 8 or 9 years,
Man.
and
All right.
it was epic, man. I learned so much, and long story short, I would go out and find things for the store. Like I would go out early in the weekends and like hunt for records. And whatever I brought
You
them,
go, you
they'd
go,
give
you
me a big cut.
go
So
crate hunting.
yeah,
Crate diving.
exactly, exactly. I would be in your garage.
Yeah.
And so I would bring in stuff. They would say, we have 5 copies of that record already. You can't really use another one. And I would start amassing piles of records
Yep.
and decided, hey, maybe I'll sell these online. And then
And so it began.
at a holiday party at Lori's, I met my business partner, David Baker, and he who also had worked at Lori's before I did. And they brought back some alumni. He was one of them, and we got to talking and hit it off. We went to a killer taco spot and just kept talking. And he's like, hits me up a little later in our friendship, and he says, I have a lot of records to sell because he was in a band back in the '90s, and we're at a major label that he would be given records, or
Mm.
he was also a big music fan and bought some. So he was like, how do I sell these? And I was like, well, you sell them to me and I sell them to the store and I'll give you my cut. Well, how do I sell it and get what it's worth? And
Mm.
I was like, well, you could sell it, on the internet. And he's like, nah. And I was like, you could sell it at a record show. And he was like, yeah. So that's kind of how we started. I would take those records, he would take his records,
Mm.
sell them at the record show, and we split a table, and that turned into each of us getting our own table. And then we're like, what if we had a record show, but like every day, where we didn't have to move it every time?
Okay, I
And
see
then,
where this is going now. All right, all right.
and then we're like, well, why don't we have an online store? We'll find an office, and we found the room we're in right now on Foster, just west of Kimball. And plug.
Link in the
This
comments.
one goes out to you, Foster Avenue. And you saw across the street here is Northeastern University, home of Wizard Radio.
Former wizard here, by the way, where I discovered it's where I first discovered Erpland by Osric Tentacles,
Nice.
in time to get to see them, which was amazing.
Oh my God.
And yeah, no, I was a wizard for 2 years, and I went undergrad and grad over there. Yep.
That rules.
So that was some real horrible flashbacks driving down that street coming here. Yeah.
So there's like such a history over there.
Oh my God. I mean, folks, listen. We're in a record store right now, and there are rows of vinyl. Now, in the WZRD studios, for those of you who aren't familiar, there are walls, and I mean floor to ceiling, top to bottom, side to side, like the way you would find books in a library. Thousands, thousands, thousands of records. It is really, I remember the first time walking into the studio and my first thought was not forget, I don't know what any of this music is. I was like, what do I like put on first? And
Yeah,
the
where do you
guy,
start?
right, and the guy was just like, here's like here, and just pulled out a record and handed it to me. It was Erpland.
Huh.
And that was the first record I played as a wizard. And he was like, you start here. And I put it on. I was like, oh, I could get into this. I could do
Pretty
this.
good, right? Yeah,
It's
and
not bad.
tapes and CDs and
Mhm.
oh my God, that
It's
library is
also it's
impressive.
also where I met Dave Cozen, who was season four,
Hey,
episode four last season. No Sides Records. Check him out on Bandcamp.
we have all of their 3-inch CDs right on the other side of this
Hell
camera.
yes.
Um, so yeah, knowing that there's not only two colleges, a high school, there's just like no record stores for a while. And then we're like, this could really bring underrepresented community together. And it's been a wild ride, man. It's been awesome to like meet not only Wizard Radio people, but just like North Park people and people that just love records and surrounding, suburbs, exurbs, and like neighborhoods around here. Um, it's been awesome. I'm so glad we didn't just go online and built like a brick and mortar like place where you could come and hang out and talk to people and listen and teach us and it's like it's so rewarding in so many ways.
Hell yeah, dude. That's fucking awesome to hear.
Yeah.
So, we talked a lot about the build up to round trip records and the nascent stages, but what was it like from a human perspective, from your perspective? What was it like transitioning from an aficionado and a hobbyist and a kind of a minor uh you know reseller, if you will,
Mhm.
to full on opening and operating a brick and mortar business?
There's so many steps. Um, but there's so many fun decisions you get to make. Like David and I are both big fans of record stores. Wherever we go, like we're like, where's the record store? We find it. And so from that, we were able to cull like what we would want. You take from like the best, really. Like we would go into the store and say that store had a really good setup, or that store was really well curated, or that store was good for this or good for that. We tried to maybe cast a wide net in, not a huge space. Um, but yeah, that was a really fun part. Like we got to build our dream record store, right? Um,
And to be honest, I'm gonna adjust my chair here, folks. To be honest, that's kind of what it seems like. Being in here, it feels like it could just as easily be a record aficionado's like listening cave. Like I look around and it's not just records. I mean, forget about not just, full size LPs, there's and 45s and different size records. There's cassettes, there's CDs, there's newspaper clippings, there's
yeah, we got VHS,
books.
we got books.
Like
Um,
it's just a whole lot of a whole lot, and it really shows kind of that incorporation. And if I'm hearing you right, was the mentality behind what to put together kind of based on the ideal of what you would want to find in a record shop?
yeah, but not just me or not just David. We wanted any person to come in and see something familiar and see something they need to learn about or may want to learn about. Um, so yeah, like I feel like there's a lot of the like trope are at record stores are like people that are like holier than thou or like too cool. And I feel like that's a missed opportunity. I feel like if you can engage someone and bring them into the party, like they're gonna love it. And because like you love it, I love it.
The
And
moment I set foot in this place, I wanted to come back.
well, that's great to hear. I mean, I feel like that's definitely a sign that we're doing something right. Um, And we try to like treat customers like, we don't want them to just like come in and look. I mean, we want them to come in and look, but we engage with them. Because like we don't know everything. We know a lot, but the more you know, there's more to know. And
Yeah.
the more you know, you don't know.
Well,
So they definitely teach us, we teach them, and we try to find anything they're looking for. We always say, since we're always out looking, that, if you tell us that crazy rare record, like this guy came in and wanted Dennis Wilson Pacific Ocean Blue, which is like a tricky one to find. Yeah. And it goes for like maybe, more than your average used record. But I'll tell you what was like super mind blowing to both of us was that very same day, a customer walked in, saw a record up on our wall that was $100. And he goes, "Well, do you guys take trade?" And we go, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "Okay, I'm going to come back with some trade." And he comes back with a stack, including Dennis Wilson Pacific Ocean Blue.
oh,
Hey, man, we got a record for you. I know you've been looking for 3 years. It came in an hour or two later.
can't make this shit up.
It's like I believe in the record gods. And that's why when I wake up, I love not knowing what's going to happen because it's always been pretty good, and that is like such a rewarding way to live. Um, like I don't know if my next paycheck is guaranteed or if I'm going to suddenly come up on like 100 records for $10. You know what I mean? Like, uh, it's like a wildlife.
I mean, it's pretty serious to step into and to be present in a physical space for 5 years is in the words of or in the words of Bob Dylan to Lowell George is no little feat. But and speaking of which, we got the band right here, and we've got Grateful Dead, like I mentioned, but also yeah, Elton John, Billy Idol, Hawkwind, Aretha Franklin, Janis Joplin, David Bowie looking around. I mean, you
Dude, we
know,
will go hunting for the rarest stuff, and we try to find like stuff other stores may not have, or I don't know. We just find stuff that we think is going to be
I'm
cool, and then somebody will come in and say, "Do you guys have Dan Fogelberg?" And yeah, we got that too. I mean, we're not really trying to be like, "Oh no, we don't have that.
I'm gonna
Go
put
somewhere
in
else."
I'm gonna put in my official bid. I'm looking for a copy of Professional Rapper by Lil Dicky.
All right,
If you find it, please let me know because I've been
it's
looking
in the
for that
vault, man.
record for a long time. And I mean, from inception to now, how would you say it's going?
It's definitely like a gradual improvement. I feel like the people that collect records will seek out record stores, which helps so much. Like when we ask people, "How'd you find us?" Oh, just like Google. I'm visiting from London, or I'm
Mhm.
visiting from Iowa, or New York, or LA,
Hell
or whatever.
yes. Hell yes.
And I just wanted to go to all the record stores. Um, but our job is then to give them an experience and have the records they're looking for so that they want to come back. But yeah, it's great. So like there's that. There's the people in the neighborhood that come in and we get to know them. They become like friends. There's people, that only found us through like our Discogs page and
Or through Heady Wax
or
Fiends.
through Heady Wax Fiends or the internet or yeah, I mean it's great. That group has really kept us afloat. Uh, we came up on a big collection from a old record store owner who was a big deadhead. And I remember going through these records. There was about 10 boxes. And I'm just like, okay, where's the Grateful Dead records? And it was like half his, half someone else's. And it was like, okay, Percy Faith, no, no. Like, oh, there's the Clash. Let's take that one. And then at the end, I was like, where are the Grateful Dead records, man? He's like, oh, I keep those in the special room. And back we go. And I'm like, okay, here you go. He's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to sell these. So, I mean, it's always like a process trying to like reassure people that, if you let go of your records, they will be put into the hands of the people that are really going to
Mm.
enjoy them and like get something from them like they should.
It's one of the things that the people who are going to enjoy them and appreciate them the most, right? And one of the things that I love so much about Heady Wax Fiends is not that they repress old records that we've always wanted to own, but they provide an opportunity for new artists to press their music to vinyl and put those records into the hands of people who we know will listen to them.
Yeah, there's
Like,
a lot of great listeners there. You could just see it. It's palpable. Like every post is like, I love this record. And there's about as many people loving it because they already know it and love it as there are people that are like, oh, what is that? Let me like use that as like the next thing I type into, YouTube or wherever.
absolutely. I mean, I remember starting to see people post Munyon records, and like most of them were folks that I had traded them to. And I was like, oh, it's so cool to see my buddy's record getting posted in my favorite group. Like this is really something special here. This is
Yeah.
really like there's really something to this.
And if we order too many jazz dispensary records on record store day, we have nothing to worry about. It's awesome.
The push goes quick. So before we part, is there any piece of advice you would give to anyone who's considering maybe venturing into starting a record shop or going into this business?
I think if you love records,
Mm,
it can work. You have to love records. You have to want to know about them. You have to know how to tell someone about them.
mm.
Um, but I will say, for all the records that I've found after years of hunting, and that gas, we all know it. If you collect records, you're like flipping, like, oh, I don't know what oh my God,
Mm.
it's the one I want forever. Oh my, and you just get like a rush when someone comes in here and they're looking and you hear them gasp, like it's a universal sound. It feels the same to me as like when I found that one record. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
and
You get to
you're like,
relive that.
they found it. I know how that. It's awesome.
And you
It's the
facilitated it.
if that's how it happens, great. You know, for me, but it doesn't have to be me. They're out there, and if we're able to be a record store, then other people can do it too. And I think when I moved to Chicago and went to DePaul, there were a dozen record stores you could walk to. And it really helps the ecosystem, not only of the stores, but of the music scene and of the musicians in the area and the city in general, neighborhood in general. You just walk down the street and you hear like, stereos from all these record stores pumping out into Clark Street or, Foster Avenue. Um, it's
And
great.
and it's just to me, to wrap it up, just another great reminder that being a musician is not a barrier for entry to being involved in the world of music. There are so many other paths and so many other ways to be involved in live music and studio music and making sure or facilitating getting music from your hands into the hands of others who will appreciate it and love it and share it with others. There really is this appropriate circuitousness to the way that a record goes round and round
Yeah.
and the way that these stories continue to do. And hopefully,
And
um,
they take you on amazing adventures.
yeah,
And you have these like experiences with that's where the name came from, round trip. Because like every record is like a journey somewhere.
no, and it's also an actual record. Like it's a living, even though it is a static medium, it is still living media, even though it's pressed onto a record. Because, as we were talking, off camera or earlier, I don't remember,
Mhm.
when a used record, it carries its history and its grooves.
Yeah,
And
totally.
and sometimes, that'll add luster, that'll add this tone, this je ne sais quoi, the thing we
Totally,
can't
man.
name,
I
the
feel like
essence.
more and more there's people like no shade to anyone that collects only mint or like audiophile pressings only. But to me, as time goes by, I'm really partial to what I call hippie condition,
Mm.
which is like a beat up cover with like maybe seam splits from like somebody actually playing it so much. And like the vinyl may start off a little crackly, but then the music takes over and it was just like cared for just enough to enjoy it all. And they're usually a little cheaper. So you could get more for your buck and like uh it has that history.
Folks, not just secondhand talent. Secondhand records. There's value in everything secondhand. This has been Steiner with Paul Nixon here at Round
Thank
Trip
you.
Records with another episode of Secondhand Talent, and we will see you next Wednesday. And we're done. That's a podcast.